Hey y'all, it's Becky here from the Bacosphere. I don't know why I did it that way, but I did. And welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Becky, and every Tuesday and Thursday we talk about the climate here. We do. The problems, yes, but the solutions. Wait, the problems, yes, but the solutions, yes. That's what I'm supposed to point. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, go ahead and click that subscribe button below, hit the like, comment, share, all that good stuff. And if you are new from this video, well, congratulations, you have entered into the Climate Book Club, where every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, because I'm a Californian, we talk about a particular book that relates to the climate crisis. And we have been focusing now on All We Can Save, which is Truth, Courage, and Solutions for the Climate Crisis. And this book is a compilation of essays and poems written by women in the climate change movement, because historically women have really not been at the table for the climate change movement, particularly women of color, and so this gives them a voice. I believe, if I check correctly, by the way, this is a Pella case, highly recommend. Check it out. It's biodegradable. But anyways, I was going to check and see, because it was number 1 on something. On Book Authority. Top 100 best climate change books of all time. All We Can Save is number 1. So that's pretty dang good. Yeah, so it's a book written in 2020, so it's pretty relevant. And we're going to talk about the second part of the book. There are 8 parts in the book, so we're going to go through one part each week, which is a lot of reading. I just barely got through it, but I got through it. But it's really good reading, so I highly recommend it. But yeah, because if we don't do I was originally going to do one for 2 weeks, split it up in half, but then we would be going for 16 weeks, and that's, if I do my math right, which I won't, it's a long time. It's a long time. I swear I'm fine. I don't know what's going through my head. It's 4 months, I think. Okay. Anyways, so let's go ahead and just get right into it, so I stop jibber-jabbering and embarrassing myself with my lack of math and the head skills. I was someone that was very good at writing down my work, because that was literally the only way I was able to go through problems in math class. Anyways, all right, so the first of this section for advocate. Well, let's first look at the pretty picture. It says, and it's also on my Instagram, which is the Beccasphere. But it says, any health we have in common. Any sickness we have in common, which I think is just a great reminder for us to realize that we are all connected in this, and so no one can really escape from the climate issue. And the climate issue is not just an issue on the side, it's interconnected in all the issues that you can think about. And I apologize for my chair. I'm going to close that. Okay. So, advocate. The first one is called Litigating in a Time of Crisis. And that is by Abigail Dillon. So I'm basically just going to talk about, the parts that I highlighted, and then please go ahead and use the chat section to insert either what you found when you read the book, or if you haven't read the book, just what you think from what I'm telling you. Yes, so if you are feeling as alive as you've ever felt, relentlessly anxious and incapable of being at peace, I am with you. And I felt that from a spiritual level, because I'm the same way. So I've kind of come to terms with the fact, and she says this at the end of her section, that I will never be at peace and with this topic because it's just so blaring, and that's just the way it is. You need to bring a chair, Mother. Okay. Sorry. I should have brought a chair here for you.
It's okay.
Insert Sandy.
Keep going.
It's okay. We just started. It was me
Okay.
rambling part of the time because I don't have you to tell me to stop rambling.
Oh.
I showed my horrible math skills by trying to explain how many weeks it would be if I did 2 weeks per section. So anyways,
Yeah.
okay, we're moving on. So, yeah, so that part that talks about not having that inner peace, I mean, partially reminds me of a certain song from the folklore album of Taylor Swift, because it is, but just not being able to give peace and still like doing just what you can, and recognizing that peace might not be part of your trajectory. That's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. And I'm becoming more and more okay with that. I definitely was not originally. Another part that I liked in that, we're just in the first section,
yep.
Is that she was basically blatantly saying that for people that say, oh, renewable energy is just too expensive, she's like, what can too expensive mean when we're contemplating the inundation of the world's most populous cities, dire food and water shortages, mass migrations, and the sixth extinction? And I agree with that. Mom does too.
Sorry, it was a chip.
But yeah, no, like seriously, I think about that all the time. The world does not just revolve around your GDP. There's more to it than that. You know, there's health and security and your house being flooded. You know, there's other things out there. And she continues by saying, why does the narrative of U.S. leadership, flawed as it is, break down when we're talking about climate change? And that's another thing that I basically, okay, so she breaks down all the counter arguments that I always hear in like my comment section and stuff. Oh, can you close the door?
Close the window? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. But she basically breaks it down. Barry Harry, Mom must agree. Yes, Mom agrees. She must agree with everything I'm saying. She is Mother.
That's right.
But yeah, welcome. She's here. So I have another brain to bounce off of, in case the comment section, in case people aren't contributing. But thank you for being here so that you can. But yeah, no, I always find it frustrating that common argument that I see is, oh, well, first we have to make sure China and India are moving before we do anything. And I'm like, why is that an either or situation? Foreign policy and domestic policy has always been chewing and walking gum that's not the phrase, walking and chewing gum at the same time. Like, it's not something that should be an either or. And furthermore, if we are to boast about how the US is a leader in the world, then we ought to act like it. We can't just do it when it's convenient. So anyways, I loved that she commented on that. And she said, I reject lazy fatalism. And I do too, because it's not productive. And we deserve better. There is a unique positioning in the United States to be able to handle this crisis, and we need to utilize it. Another part that I liked is she said, and this is on page 52, by the way, if anyone's following along, it's a profound kind of entitlement to believe, despite all evidence to the contrary, that we are going on living as we are. And I honestly didn't think of it as a state of entitlement, but it 100% is. It really is an entitlement, because if you are to say, hey, no, things are just going to be fine, things are just going to continue, that really shows where you are in the world. You know, the fact that you are able to be as oblivious as you have been up to this point really shows, you know, honestly, your stature in the world. And I mean, yeah, it just it's an interesting way to look at it, but it's true.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a slow dawning of realization on a lot of people about where we're at. And that's what she confessed to in the next paragraph that I totally identified with. She says, I was oblivious to structural racism and the unearned structural advantages I enjoyed. I thought my job was to hone my strengths within a system that could be trusted to work for everyone.
Yeah, I think that's especially compelling to people in your generation.
Yeah.
Because that's something that people in my generation wish that we could think. We wish that we can just stick in a job for 30 or 40 years, the same job, and have a stable income,
and
retire.
Be okay.
Exactly.
And that everybody else is okay.
Exactly.
Because the system is fair. Which we now know it's not fair.
It's not fair. And unfortunately, it has gotten to the point in my generation where it's so obvious that it's not fair. It's not possible to hide that side anymore.
Right. Yeah.
It's just so in our faces, and the structure is breaking down to an extent where we can't live like our parents did. And that's infuriating to some people, particularly to my white male colleagues, honestly, because I think that's one of the reasons why some of them have rebelled recently in politics, because they can't be how their dads were. They can't be the main breadwinners of the family and be able to do all this stuff, and they look for a scapegoat. Mm-hmm. And just white people in general, we do that, and like, I feel I am privileged where I have been able to ignore some of this stuff for a long period of time until college. Honestly, college is where my eyes were really open to all these different things.
It's where education occurred, right?
Yeah. Education in these topics, which is ironic because college is where the least amount of diversity was in people, because I went from California to Oregon, so there was like a lot more white people, so that was ironic. But in the way of classes, that's really where I learned, hey, like, things aren't all dandy and rosy.
Yes.
So,
but she gives hope at page 53. The weight of history is on our shoulders, but this moment is alive with possibility.
I love that part. I highlighted it too.
Just really nice.
And I like the part that she said right before, which is the struggle is welcoming to latecomers. Yeah. Living in this time of crisis for our democracy as well as the climate is breaking my heart open and creating a space for new understanding. Yeah. And I relate to that so much. I have learned so much about so many other social justice issues and so many other issues in the world from focusing on the climate issue, because it's all connected.
So I really loved her personal story about her mom, who was a trial lawyer.
Yeah.
And then she goes on to become a lawyer as well. And it's the clerkship at Earth Justice that
because she didn't initially have she wasn't able to fall in love with it quite the same way that her mom made it look.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I really like that. That's a teaser for y'all to get the book, because the writing is quite lovely, and hearing the personal stories, we won't go into them super much, but they're very compelling.
But this is all with an advocacy for the environment, because then she goes on to, how Richard Nixon actually laid the foundation of the EPA and the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act and the Endangered Species Act and et cetera. And that has allowed her then to litigate against.
Exactly. And that's the importance of legislation over just executive orders, though we're still early into Biden's presidency. So that's not a nick on what he's doing so far. But that's why legislation is so important, because it allows for lawyers in states and in counties to point to those pieces of legislation as examples of what should be upheld. And, it creates a foundation for the country to stand on. Yeah. And so it's super important. And the 1960s and 70s with Rachel Carson, Silent Spring, and the Chicago River catching on fire and smog everywhere in LA and New York and all that kind of stuff ended up in such a big movement that for once the issue of the environment wasn't able to just be put as a secondary issue, which it always is. Yeah. Even now, even now, it is still a secondary issue. And it will continue to be at least until the pandemic's over, which is semi-reasonable, except it needs to be part of the solution for the pandemic. We can't just go to business as usual, because then we're just kind of like, we're hurting ourselves. But I liked where she said relegated to the status of one issue among many in the United States. The environment has languished as a second-tier concern for most of my lifetime. And same. Yeah. I also liked how she said, living today, it is breathtaking to imagine so much getting done in Congress. For talking about.
That was funny, wasn't it?
Yeah, seriously. And I mean, I wasn't in the 70s. I don't know how the different parts of like Congress and how together Congress was perceived back then. Though I think it's probably more divided now than it was back then.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But I don't know if it still was seen as divided back then. So I don't know. So that's interesting. On page 57, I also liked where she said, I believe it was important that we were part of the same community as the relegators we were suing and the members of the review board that was hearing the case. So she talks about how she was helping to stop a coal mining facility from starting up in her area. And she attributes one of the ways that she won the case was because it was part of the community. And so even people that were on the other side of the legal case, they were still part of the community, and they actually helped her by like pushing her some evidence towards her case, to help, because they realized this is in my backyard. This is something that pertains to me personally. And it made it a lot more of a community effort in the case. And that just continues to show the power of community-based effort. And we will see that throughout the advocate section. Yeah. They really value community-based stuff, which is it's amazing to me, because I really didn't hear much about community-based stuff until the last book that we read. Yeah. And now it's everywhere. Yeah. Yeah. It's just like our realization of, oh yeah, community matters. That's a thing too. It's not just federal and individual. There's other things in between.
No, a ton of laws and everything that are enacted at the state and local level.
Yeah. And a detail that I like too, which really just shows how sketchy fossil fuel industries are, is that they discovered that the project, like the coal project, was predicated on federal financing from the Depression era loan program designed to electrify the rural West. With some digging, they realized the financial coal plant was in conflict with the budget approved by then President George W. Bush, and they filed a lawsuit challenging the loan program's failure to assess and disclose environmental impacts as federal law requires. So they were actually able to see, hey, this, for one thing, they're utilizing something that was not meant to be utilized in the past in that way, and they're still breaking the rules.
They went after the money.
Yeah.
They followed the money path.
Yeah, they followed the money.
And because they knew that introducing a new coal plant or having a coal plant there was more expensive than renewables. And so they were trying to figure out, where is this coming from?
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
Me too. I want to be a part of one of those.
Well, it's
so cool.
Here's the essential ingredients: scrappy people who are willing to work backward from goals that seem impossibly ambitious at the start.
I highlighted that part too. I also like the part where she said the critical role of lawsuits and in other struggles, for instance, civil rights and women's rights and marriage equality, is well understood. What is not well understood is the role of lawsuits in delivering cleaner air and water, preserving and restoring ecosystems, and my favorite part, generally arresting the human tendency to kill the world. Yeah. Oh, man. And we underestimate the power of contribution, the acting within our own sphere of influence to tackle a piece of the problem that is right in front of us. And that is something I completely encourage everyone. It's to just find the area that you're interested in, because it's such a big problem. It can be so overwhelming, but everybody has their own little strengths, and everybody has their own niche that they can utilize to actually make change. Hi, Izzy, by the way. For example, Izzy. Sorry, Izzy. She double majored in economics and psychology. Those are two areas that definitely can have an environmental impact, either through the current job that she works at for their environmental impact, or just in her expertise that she has gotten her degree in. You know, like there's always a space that you can do something in. And when in doubt, you can always just donate to organizations that can help, vote for people, and be relatively informed about overall issues. You know, they're at this point in 2021 with Google and all these resources that we have available. She applied for an environmental research think tank job.
Whoa.
I love you, Izzy.
Good luck, Izzy.
Good luck. Fingers crossed. Oh my gosh. See?
So
there we go. You know, like there's always an opportunity for doing something for economics.
Excellent.
Excellent. Beautiful. I love you, Izzy. And even if it doesn't pan out, I still love you, Izzy, for even applying to that thing. Love you. But there's always something, and it's really cool. And just the 8 of you that are here, thank you, everybody who's watching me right now, by the way. You are becoming more informed in the issue and just caring. And that in itself is something. You should do more than just that, though, because it's 2021 and we really need to move on this issue. But it's something, and it's really good.
I think we should rename the next poem to be Izzy, to be of use.
Yes. So the next is a poem, and I will go ahead and read it out. It's by Marge Percy, and it's called To Be of Use. And Hannah says hi. Hi, Hannah. And I'll go ahead and read it out, but it applies. Izzy says hi to you as well.
Oh, hi, Izzy. Hi, Hannah.
Hi. Okay. The people I love the best jump into work head first without dallying in the shallows, and swim off with their sure strokes almost out of sight. They seem to be natives of that element, the black, sleek heads of seals, bouncing like half-submerged balls. I love people who harness themselves an ox to a heavy cart, who pull like water buffaloes with massive patience, who strain in the mud and the muck to move things forward, who do what has to be done again and again. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in the row and pass the bags along, who are not parlor generals or field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in or the fire must be put out. The work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphoras. I knew I'd butcher that. Greek amphoras for wine or oil. Hopi vases that held corn are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real.
That is a beautiful poem.
I think that's my favorite one so far.
I think that is mine too.
Yeah. I think I just resonate with that one a lot, because I appreciate people who they just do it.
Yeah.
You know, through the hard times, they just swim. And I love the analogy of seeing it as just like swimming with their strokes almost out of sight. Yeah. You know, just
sometimes we don't quite know where we're swimming to, but we're swimming.
Yeah. Ain't that the truth? Sometimes we wish we had some goggles. Jeremy says the work of the world is truly the best work.
Yeah.
I agree. I totally agree. Yeah.
Awesome.
So the next section is called Beyond Coal, and it's by Mary Ann Hitt. And she talks about first how it's similar to the previous section that we were referring to. There was a coal plant that recently got retired, and they found that the coal plant from the NAACP, which is the National African American. Okay, I'm not completely sure what it is, but it's an American organization, African American organization.
I'm not going to save you on this, Becky, because I don't know what it stands for.
Okay, please.
A really influential
somebody
group.
Put it in there. It's a very influential group, especially for racial justice.
Yep.
And they had created a report called Cold Blooded, which just the name.
Yes.
Just is everything. It's, coal is in coal plants. They gave the coal plant in that area a D grade for harming low-income communities and communities of color specifically. And I really want to check out that report because I'm just curious, But she talks about how many different coal plants are connected to communities of color, and also though how many coal plants have been shut down.
Well, so she's part of that group that is amazing. It's
Beyond Coal.
Beyond Coal campaign.
Mm-hmm.
They have done so much. They're at 315 plants shut down, 215 to go. Boy, without them.
And they have changed it from us, the U.S., having 50% of its energy from coal just 10 years ago to now only a quarter of coal used. And one of the parts that I love is that she then goes on to say that during that time, the lights were still on. Which is a very common argument for people that are like for fossil fuels.
You're right.
You're going to run out of lights. You're not going to have any power left. And she's like, well, I dropped it by half in 10 years and the power's still on. So beautiful. They were boxed into a corner by the determined movement of sophisticated, tenacious activists that made the case before regulators, elected officials, and the public in venues ranging from public utility commissions and corporate boardrooms to editorial pages. I want to be the editorial page. And public hearings that the plants were dangerous, uneconomic, and obsolete. And their goal is to phase out coal in the developed world by 2030.
And did you see that they've also blocked new construction of more than 200 proposed coal plants?
Yes.
Amazing. So, you could say 315 plus the 200. It's just outstanding.
They've done an amazing job. And if any of you are in Europe, there's also a Europe Beyond Coal one as well, which I believe was found useful for the most recent coal plant that the UK okayed, and they got like a lot of backlash for, and they had to rethink it. I don't know if it ended up going through or not. I need to double check that. But because honestly, first of all, they attributed their work to saving more than 8,000 lives every year and preventing more than 130,000 asthma attacks annually. And the lights stayed on, and electricity bills remained pretty much stable.
Way cool.
And that just really shows an example of how it's not just climate change that we can attribute coal plants to being bad and fossil fuel industries to not being great. There's so many other negative impacts of the fossil fuel industry that are literally in people's backyard. So if they don't feel compelled to act due to the idea of climate change because it's just too out there for them, there's things right in people's backyards, like poor air quality, poor water quality, oil spills, like asthma attacks for kids. Like it's ridiculous. There's so many issues out there. Fracking causes earthquakes in areas that don't usually get earthquakes.
Oklahoma.
Seriously. Yeah. So, and one part, okay, so then she goes and talks about 10 lessons that she has learned. And I'm just going to give you the headlines and then like the little parts that I highlighted. Okay. So the first one is advocacy. Grounded in strategy is essential. So that's the thing. They're not just advocates that are like going out there. I see you, Blockbuster Studios. Blockbuster Studio. There's the S on the other side, so I'm guessing you're not actually related. In which case, I'm so sorry you died. No. Blockbuster Studios. I'm sorry. So yeah. So advocacy is important if done correctly, and that's the thing is advocates and activists, they're not just running around just screaming like the world's ending. They're strategically looking at it. No, not related. No worries. Yeah, no, I figured. So yeah, they're not running around just like chickens with their head cut off. They are strategic. They're in, they're pulling big hours to try to actually uncover the dirt, which there's a lot of dirt in these topics to properly bring down fossil fuel industries, which is awesome.
She talks about the advocacy dial, where they go back and they research the age, size, pollution controls, economic viability, political support, everything that they can about a coal boiler.
Yes, and absolutely.
Basically, they're identifying, what's wrong with that plant.
They're well educated in the industry,
Yeah.
And a part that I thought was interesting too is one of the critical truths that she learned is market forces alone simply won't retire coal plants. And that is a main argument that I hear on the conservative side, is that just let the market flow.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, unfortunately, it doesn't work the way that we would like it to. I mean, we're kind of seeing in Texas how it doesn't always work as great as we'd like it to, because ultimately markets are run by humans and humans are still flawed. But yeah, so it doesn't, markets don't just take care of it. You need to have a push. There needs to be some sort of starter to push things over the edge.
Right.
And that's those activist groups.
Yeah. And if you look at what they're up against large corporations with lots and lots of money and lots of influence, and politicians that have been influenced.
Yeah.
So the market forces aren't really correct.
Yeah. Which we will talk about more later in one of the other sections, is just how much money is put into like the politics with fossil fuel companies and stuff that really make it so even like, for example, politics is not run by people as much as we would want it to be, which is why we couldn't just rely on federal government either. It can't just be one or the other. It has to be multiple things with a lot of starters.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the second one, advocates need to understand economics. That's a super interesting one, because again, it just really shows how important it is to just have a baseline understanding of what's going on in order to properly tackle the issue. The third one is state and local decisions move the needle. And she says state utility commissions govern electricity production. State legislators set clean energy targets. Cities determine transportation policy and set building codes. State and local government are in charge of enforcing and zoning for mining, drilling, and fracking. So we need to move from a state level as well. The next one is local pollution motivates action. And that's exactly what we were talking about before. Coal ash spills in our rivers, oil slicks on our beach, smog triggers asthma attacks among our kids and heart attacks and strokes in adults. Fracking ruins our drinking water, toxic mercury in our seafood. So it's not just that we have to worry about climate change. It's all these other issues that we need to worry about as well. The next one is bold and clear goals enable open source campaigns. So when she says open source, it's something people can modify and share because its design is publicly accessible. And that's another super important part, is that it needs to be accessible to the public. It can't just be behind closed doors. It needs to be able to be inclusive.
In 2010, the Sierra Club, with their Beyond Coal initiative, explicitly laid out that they wanted to phase out all coal by 2030.
Bold.
Very bold. But what happened with that is then there was over 300 other U.S. organizations from neighborhood groups, etc., that then began to be part of their network because they understood what the Sierra Club was trying to do and what this initiative was trying to do.
Yeah.
So that clear initiative, that clear saying of what they were trying to do, enabled a whole bunch of other people to come on board and to push the movement further.
And that's what reminds me of a previous thing that was talked about in the last section that we looked at, Roots, is that it's no longer the case that you have to start your own movement or start your own thing. There are so many organizations and movements that you can join nowadays that you don't necessarily need to start a new thing. And again, I'm a hypocrite because I started my own YouTube channel, but you know what I mean?
But there are other YouTube channels.
But there are other YouTube channels out there. Yes, we're collaborating. We are part of a WhatsApp group talking together, So it's important to find your community, find the people that are doing similar stuff that you're doing or that you want to do in order to actually, do the most you can. The next part goes along with that idea, and environmental justice must be central. It cannot just be a side thought. It can't be an afterthought. It has to be a central part of the conversation. Just like climate change has to be a central part of the conversation for something like COVID, bounce back, right? Yeah. It can't just be an afterthought. It needs to be part of the structure, because otherwise we're going to just run into the same problems that we did before. The next one, we can't leave people behind, which sounds like the last one, but what they're actually referring to is, for example, the communities that have been centered around fossil fuel industries, the families that have been third and fourth generation coal miners. We can't just leave those people behind. We recognize that we are taking away their jobs, and we need to find ways in which they are able to support themselves and their families and not just feel like they're left behind,
because they've given a lot for this country. They've given a lot. A lot of their family has died from coal mining, and
from black lung disease and all that kind of stuff. They have sacrificed themselves. They are soldiers for the country, and we should not put them in the same category as fossil fuel executives. Fossil fuel executives, they can go fuck themselves.
Hey.
But the people that are workers in the community, the people that are actually doing the job, it's just their livelihood, and they should not be blamed for this issue, and they need some compensation or some way to be able to move forward.
Next one.
And also I want to say, already more than 3 million Americans work in the clean energy industry, outnumbering fossil fuel workers 3-1. So that's another thing too. It's a fallacy to say that we're just losing jobs. That is very much less than half the story. In fact, we are gaining jobs and helping the economy by moving to a cleaner energy future. It's just common sense. Okay, next one. Winning on electricity is foundational and catalytic. I got there. For y'all that don't know, I'm dyslexic, so I really am very incapable of doing words.
You do great.
Jeremy says, "Oh, that's something I didn't know in statistics. 3-1 is pretty great." Yeah, right? It's insane. People don't talk about it enough, but clean energy jobs, it's what did I call it? Or what is it called? Green collar workers. There's a new industry coming up called green collar workers, and it's literally people that are in the clean energy sphere, because not only is it like installing the infrastructure for it, it's also maintaining it and also doing things like creating the battery storage needed. So there's so many job opportunities. Yeah, so winning on electricity is foundational and catalytic. And she stresses the importance of electrification is the way to heat homes without fracking gas, fuel cars without gasoline, and manufacture critical goods without burning coal. It's kind of just like, I don't know, like the Apple boom sort of thing, you know? It's just we're moving digital.
Yeah.
It's part of that sort of move. We're moving towards electricity being our main form of energy. Burning things for energy it's outdated of an idea.
Mm-hmm.
The next one, fracked gas is a bridge to nowhere. Yes. That's another argument I see all the time, is that fracking, we still need natural gas to transition. And to that, I say, because fracking, unfortunately, Apple boom, I don't know. I was just saying things. I don't actually know what I was saying on that one, but I was just talking about digital.
Digital. You know,
digital. That's what I meant. You know,
iPhone, internet.
I'm sorry. This is part of live streaming. You get my train of thought without edits. I'm sorry. Fracked gas is not a sustainable form of transitional energy. Natural gas is not natural. It still is extracting gas from the ground, which requires a lot of destruction of the ground, and those are the parts that cause, like, for example, earthquakes. And they also release, if they're not managed correctly, which many of them are not because regulations are questionable, they emit methane, which is a even more potent form of greenhouse gas than CO2. So to say that fracking or that natural gas is a transition, it's not realistic, especially if you're talking about creating new infrastructure for natural gas to be the transition.
That was surprising to me. I hadn't even thought about that. But of course, if you're going to frack and create gas, you're going to need to transport it and to pipelines and all that sort of stuff.
Which is,
this was very stark.
Yeah, that's something a lot of people don't realize, is that if you're talking about doing that transition and you're going to use fossil fuel and natural gas with the transition, that does not give you permission to create new infrastructure for that, because that is just moving backwards. So, yeah. The next one is called substantial resources deliver substantial results. And in that one, she's referring to large multi-year grants from donors are essential to their ability to deliver victories on the scale and pace. So basically, we need money. I think was basically the statement. Use your money towards good movements. One of the phrases is just being a trendsetter. If you have the economic capability to be a trendsetter, either in your individual life or through the stock market or through donations or through what banks you choose to use, because banks are very, very notorious for donating to fossil fuel industries, and they use your money to do that. So just keep in mind where your money's going, basically. Yeah, because as she says, we are the architects of our future, not the fossil fuel industry.
I loved that sentence.
Me too. Great. Did you highlight it as well?
I did.
Yes. We must be related. Okay. Then they quote AOC, the beautiful AOC.
This was a great quote.
She says, "Whether we suffer greatly or build together, it is our choice. We must choose whether this moment will lead us to regression or evolution, authoritarianism or greater democracy, extraction or preservation. Our greatest choice is to move forward towards a cooperative, collaborative world that aligns with scientific consensus." Mic drop. You can have different opinions on AOC and her policies and stuff, but she's a smart woman.
She's a good writer too.
She's a very good writer or speaker, if that might have been speaking. Okay, so the next one is called collards are just as good as kale, which is just, it's a great one. So this is by Heather McTeary-Tony. So she starts, I highlighted her first sentence, so I'm just going to read it to you. Yeah, no, cute title, right? I love it too, Jeremy. Okay, many people think of environmentalists as white people hugging trees and of the environment as the forest or jungle as opposed to their own backyard. That second part, especially, plant indigenous plants. That's
what you got out of that.
That's my PSA. Is plant indigenous plants, because the bee population needs it, and bees are not the creatures that you think they are. They're not just honeybees. They're also indigenous bees, which can be solitary, and they don't necessarily make honey, and that's a whole different video. Help. I'm thinking too many things at once. Okay. So she says mainstream America ignores the hard-learned lessons from a people who, enslaved and forced to travel across the Atlantic under unimaginable conditions to work a land they did not know, figured out how to make things thrive and grow using their wisdom of nature and spirit. As we all face the climate crisis that threatens our very existence, the ability of my ancestors to adapt to wholly new environments offers wisdom to embrace. And that's something I never even thought about, is that, you know, they were from a different continent, and they had to come there, and on threat of death, they had to make things grow from the land in a completely different environment. If you're like me and Mom, we have the brownest thumbs imaginable. We kill succulents and air plants. It's impressive. I can't even imagine if I was threatened on pain of death to make things grow for economic value, to successfully be able to do that. They have some knowledge, you know, that in itself, they have some knowledge.
They have knowledge of the seasons and of what grows and what doesn't grow. And
that's what she continues to say. Another part I like is from homegrown vegetables and pecan picking in the fall to knowing full well that mild winters meant that mosquitoes would be relentless in the summer. Everywhere I turned, I was surrounded by the interweavings of nature with Black culture, poverty, and the rural South.
Nice.
Beautiful. One, her writing is gorgeous. I highly recommend this author. Again, her name is Heather McTeary-Tony. And she's dope. But I never thought about some of the stuff that she said. And I just really appreciate it. She says, environmental justice is a fundamental civil rights issue, which it is. Absolutely.
Yeah, I highlight it too.
And community is the lens so often left out of the environmental discussion, but it's vital for identifying real solutions. And did you highlight that part too, Mom?
No, I highlighted sentences before it.
Oh.
Ancestry, nature, faith, and civil rights is all about community.
But bottom line, she talks about community. It's back to the community aspect. Wherever you all are, be the advocates in your community, whether or not it's creating a community garden, a compost site, or talking about where you get your energy from with your city council. Community. Yeah. And then she also talks about her faith and how it's intertwined with environmentalism for particularly the Black church. Unbeknownst to some, you can believe in Jesus and accept the reality of climate science at the same time.
Yay.
Snaps. Catherine Hayho would appreciate that too. Throughout my journey, my faith has made it more and more evident that it is my responsibility as a Christian to take care of what God has blessed me with, including my place on this earth. And she talks about creation care, which is just, you know, we were blessed with all these things and we need to take care of them. And that is a very good way to look at the Bible as a Christian, honestly. Mm-hmm. The tenets of my faith require that we tend and keep God's creation. The idea of salvation is the idea of freedom that carries with it the sense of responsibility to care for all things, to care for one another better. I like that thought because it's not just, oh, I'm saved. I'm good. We're good.
Yeah.
I can just chill now. It's no, everything else in the world, give back.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna on the previous page 77. Her pastor's wife often lovingly said,
"Oh, I love
you
this.
can pray and believe all you want, but without action, ain't nothing about to happen. You just wasting the Lord's sweet precious time."
I knew you'd like that part. I read that and I'm like, Mom's gonna like that. You just wasting his time. Do something.
Action.
Mm-hmm. I remember growing up, you would tell me, you know, like, you can pray, but like, he's not a vending machine. Like, that's something I've heard. I don't know if you told me that or someone else, but you can pray to God, but he ain't a vending machine. You guys do something. Yeah, and then she worked for Administrator Gina McCarthy, which, if you don't know, is now the National Climate Advisor for Biden's administration. So,
yay.
Damn, I love her.
Yeah, she was on the EPA.
She's so cool. If you haven't heard her talk, she's just a dope individual in general. I'm just saying. But Gina McCarthy, and this was before she was elected, so this is just her employees saying it. She made it clear she didn't need shy and demure. She needed leadership that had local people in mind and could listen with an ear to help. I don't know about you, but that is so exciting to hear that that's in our administration.
Yes.
I love that. And so she, the author, who I will say her name again, Heather Toney, she put together a team. So she was originally, let me clarify, she was originally the mayor of Greenville, Mississippi from 2004 to 2012. And then she was asked to join to be the lead of the EPA Southeastern region under Gina McCarthy, because Gina McCarthy was the EPA director during Obama's administration. Mm-hmm. And during her time there, Heather created a team of 90% Black women.
It's amazing.
And I love the part where she said, all too often, I secretly wished for a hidden camera to take a picture of the faces around our conference room table when a guest realized that we were the leadership team. And that brings me back to the previous thing where the lady was talking about like her lawyer mother and how she would wear slick black dresses to her thing. I immediately thought of you because my mom, she was a leadership position.
Yeah.
You were in a leadership position at HP for software.
Yeah.
And she would go into these boardrooms and she would be leading the presentation and whatever. She wore this cute little dress. She's only 5'1". She's this little woman. And everybody would underestimate her and it would be a bunch of boardroom men in suits and whatever. Yeah. And she'd just blow them away with her presentation. So,
because
power of women.
Facts matter.
Facts matter because what comes out of your mouth matters far more than how you look. And she was just showing that. And so was the lawyer woman. And so were these women.
Yes.
Defy expectations. Love that. Okay. And I also thought it was super interesting. So now she works for, which I think you should join this.
I know.
The Moms Clean Air Force. You should join Science Moms and Moms Clean Air Force. There's 2 programs. Get to work.
Okay.
So she's now a part of the Moms Clean Air Force, which also does have dads. It's not just moms, it's just the title. It's like Mr. Potato Head being Potato Head. Anyways. So she commented on how in 2015 she was pregnant with her first child. And during that period of time, one of her first thoughts that go through her head, which would definitely be one of my first thoughts with all my now understanding of environmental problems and stuff, being pregnant with my first child, which is a whole nother conversation that I want to have in a video, is talking about the birthright movement and being like a mom during this period of time. I'm not. I have a cat. I'm not a mom. She's a mom. But she said that she became very concerned when she was first pregnant with her first child because children are especially susceptible to things like heat, asthma, allergies, and insect-borne diseases, which are made worse by extreme weather and emissions. Behavioral and mental health challenges are also directly linked to worsening climate, which I want to know that study. I'm curious on that one.
Yeah.
And studies have even connected climate change to violent crimes, possibly from like extra heat, because no one's productive during extra heat, except to do bad things apparently. And so she was concerned being a mom and bringing her child into that, knowing all of these facts, like that's just terrifying. That's something I'm going to have to deal with in the future too, you know? And it's a scary world to bring your kid into. And she was also talking about how like the Zika virus, yes. Which can impact like pregnant women in particular, is made worse due to climate change because it impacts the habitat in which they're comfortable living in. There's more habitat, just like mosquitoes are doing better with climate change. Seems like all the worst things do better with climate change. Jellyfish do better with climate change too. I love jellyfish, but they're doing fine. I'm not concerned about them. And then she talked about like the fears of working around pesticides and the pain that pregnant women took, making sure they didn't bring any harmful chemicals home on their clothes, and how mothers in Flint, Michigan had to deal with the ongoing water crisis. It's just not really a safe place to bring your kid into. But then she said, and one of my favorite lines is, "My fear became my focus." And that's just how you have to look at it. Mm-hmm. I'm bringing my kid into this. I'm going to make it better, you know? And she continues to talk about how Black women are everyday environmentalists, climate leaders, because they have to be. They're in the conditions that they have to do something, or it's just going to be the same. Yeah. And yet they never get headlines, or they don't often.
You know, the Mons Clean Air Force, what she said here is they create municipal climate action plans, and they build support for clean energy and green spaces. So they're very focused. I mean, they're doing things that are extremely good for their kids and the community.
1.2 million moms and dads around the country dedicated to reducing air pollution and protecting all children from climate crisis.
So cool.
So cool.
Good. She's amazing.
She's dope. Bottom line. Also, other fun facts, not fun, but other facts. 57% of Black Americans are concerned or alarmed about climate change compared to only 49% of white folks. Personally, I think that's too low for both of them, but that's just my opinion. Yeah. America's divided. What's new? Yeah, so just wanted to share that there's a higher level of action in that community as well. All right, the next section is called For Those Who Would Govern by Joy Harjo. And I think this is a poem. It's an interesting poem. This is what it looks like.
For those who would govern.
For those who would govern. First question. Can you first govern yourself? Second question. What is the state of your own household? Third question. Do you have a proven record of community service and compassionate acts? Fourth question. Do you know the history and laws of your principalities? Fifth question. Do you follow sound principles? Look for fresh vision to shift all the inhabitants of the land, including animals, plants, elements, who share this earth. Sixth question. Are you owned by lawyers, bankers, insurance agents, lobbyists, or other politicians, anyone else who would unfairly profit by your decisions? Seventh question. Do you have authority by the original keepers of the land, those who obey natural law and are in service of the land on which you stand?
That's a pretty high bar.
It is a pretty high bar. I don't think all those things you have to check off to be able to do something. Let me just be clear.
Yeah.
And also, I think there's probably some significance to the fact that there's 7 questions because 7, I don't know, 7's just always a number. We got some things here. Okay. I can't pronounce this. Wichelle Botel. Sorry. Many people are not educated on the topic. That's why you're doing such a great job. Thank you. Thank you. Jeremy says, I couldn't agree more. Education is such an important way to find out sound principles and new ideas. I agree. Yeah. And Wichelle Batel, I'm sorry, I'm butchering it even more I say it. This kind of climate change fallout is on such a variety of quality of life factors, reminds me of how many things that poverty impacts that are also not oblivious. Obvious. Yes, sorry. Vicious cycles are also present in both.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So true. That is so true.
I'm going to let.
It's the dog.
No, it's a cat.
Oh. Roo.
This is my co-star, by the way, if you don't know. Hi.
Roo-bud.
Come to Grandma. Okay. All right. The next one is called Politics of Policy. I think is this the last section? No, it's definitely not. And we are over an hour already.
Oh.
So what should we do? Do you guys want me to keep going or should I stop it for next week?
Maybe you
let me know.
Stop it because there's, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Because this next one is on the, after this one is on the Green New Deal.
Yeah.
Which talks a lot about that too.
I feel like we almost need a bonus book club. Shoot. Okay, we're just going to do a lightning round, I guess.
That's a good idea. A
lightning round. Okay.
I like that.
So, bottom line, get the book yourself. It's a really good read. It's number 1 in one of the climate book things. It's the number 1 climate book right now. Highly recommend. A lot of good information, beautiful writing. Get the book. Okay. So this one's called The Politics of Policy by Maggie Thomas. And she talks about how it's important to talk to people who have struggled through environmental injustice and environmental racism to be the main people to talk to when it comes to enacting climate solutions.
Yes. Okay. Here's the first question. Which governor in the West did she work for?
Oh, that's what you mean by lightning round? You're quizzing me?
Yeah.
Shit. Oh, shoot. Elizabeth Warren.
No, that's in the East.
Oh, in the sorry. Jay Inslee.
Very good. She first worked for Governor Inslee for his presidential election. And then after he bowed out, she worked for
Elizabeth Warren.
Yay.
And she primarily talked about the blue. Is that the next one? Blue New Deal instead of the Green New Deal, which is definitely going to be a video. I think I'm going to dedicate a whole month to ocean topics because I really need to.
Yeah.
Because 40% of the population, is that what you were going to say next?
Yes.
Sorry. I read your mind. 40% of the U.S. population lives along the coastline. So the ocean matters. And moreover, the ocean is taking up about 1/3. I was just whale watching in Monterey. Hey! Oh my gosh, are you in Monterey County? Me too. Hey! But yeah, so 40% of the U.S. lives along the coastline, and 1/3, I believe, of it doesn't say it in there.
No.
Of greenhouse gas emissions get absorbed by the ocean. If we did not have the ocean, then we would have screwed up our Earth far faster. So that's important. And yet, unfortunately, ocean acidification is caused by that increased absorption of greenhouse gas emissions, which make it really difficult for shell-producing organisms, including coral, to be able to survive. Whole nother video. But bottom line, there's many problems involved. So,
very good.
Yeah. Watch Shell Beasel's last video. It's on Eutrophication. I can't pronounce that word, but it's basically when fresh water meets the ocean, all the runoff from that and how that impacts
nitrogen. It kills and creates a dead zone in the ocean.
Which is another argument why we need to remove pesticides and herbicides from our agricultural system. Everything's connected.
Because there's a dead zone outside of the Mississippi and the Gulf Coast, the size of New Jersey now.
Yeah. Which a dead zone is not a cell reception zone. It's in her video, which I love too. But okay. No, it's actually a place where life can't survive there because there's no oxygen in the water. Okay.
Read Heather's quote.
Which one? Oh, Heather's quote. Is that it for this one?
Yeah.
There's so much more for this one. Read it. Sorry, Maggie. Okay. Heather McGee, different Heather, says inequality and climate change are the twin challenges of our time, and more democracy is the answer to both.
Yay.
Yeah.
Next one.
A Green New Deal for all of us. I want this lady to talk with my fellow my friend conservative environmentalists that are very against the Green New Deal. I'm just really curious about the conversation they would have.
Yeah.
Anyways, so she was one of the people that helped write the Green New Deal. And one of the parts I especially liked is she said, my grandmother's family was not eligible for Social Security at least 15 years because her mother was a washerwoman, and the New Deal program excluded agricultural and domestic workers, nearly all Black at the time, because President Roosevelt needed to secure votes for the Southern Democrats. From the Southern Democrats, and Southern Democrats needed cheap labor for economically vulnerable Black people. So it just shows that all systems are flawed.
And then she talks about the GI Bill, which also discriminated against Black people. And then she also talked about...
Oh, this is Rihanna Gunn Wright, by the way. I forgot to mention her name.
Yeah. Frontline communities up close to pollution.
So she's one of the writers of the Green New Deal, and she came from a community which was not really treated very well by the New Deal itself. So the idea that she still helped create the Green New Deal, which shows that the Green New Deal was much more than just the New Deal. And it's a combination of projects and policy. Any other lightning round questions you got for me, Mom?
The IPCC says that we have to do what by 2030?
Get rid of fossil fuel emissions? Half fossil fuel emissions. Okay, not surprised by that one.
Keep warming under
2 degrees Celsius?
1.5.
1.5.
You're very good. This was also interesting. She said the Green New Deal emerges from an analysis of the climate crisis that identifies it as a consequence of systems, neoliberalism, strategic racism, and unfettered capitalism. I had never thought of it like that. So
yeah, me neither. Yeah.
Do you know what the 3 Ps are?
The 3 Ps of what? Oh, principle, power, and are you talking about the headlines? Principle, power, and policy? Is policy the third one?
Actually, it's problems.
Problems. Shoot. This was actually the one that I honestly did not get the chance to finish reading, so maybe it's best that we just stop. I got close, but
really good.
Again, I'm dyslexic and it's a lot to read to cover one section per each. So I want to do a video anyways on comparing the Green New Deal and the Blue New Deal.
That's great.
I think there should be a Teal New Deal. What do you guys think? Teal New Deal is next, right? Okay, I'm going to sign out because I'm
next section is?
Next section, oh yes. Next section, which we're going to read on Thursday, is called Reframe. And the little illustration here says the problem of the climate crisis is the failure of language. The right word would be as long as the lives of my grandchildren and their grandchildren.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So we need to frame what we're doing. Okay.
Yeah. And actually, I'm going to just quickly go back to like the quick little descriptions of each section to... where is it? It's in the beginning of the beginning. Oh, yeah. So this is how they described Reframe. to get y'all a teaser. Language and story, creativity and culture are means of making sense, to tell the truth, expand, flip, and rekindle it, imagining, evolving, holding on to our humanity. So that is going to be the section for next week. So if you haven't gotten the book already, please go ahead and do so. If you don't have the book for next week, still feel free to come and visit, because clearly I say a lot that is in the book. So you can still definitely be involved. And yeah, if you haven't subscribed already, please go ahead and do so, because I believe I'm only 2 away from hitting the 300 mark. And if I do, then I promised a little tattoo tour, because I have some fun tattoos, and most of them are environmentally oriented. Fun fact, so I can share little stories. If you like my little mental random brain of thought. That's not a word. Anyways, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you greatly, and I will see you all on Tuesday, when we will talk about the connection between keeping local journalism alive along with environmental activism. So I'm very excited to share that with you, because I have a background in environmental science and journalism, so I hit them both. So without further ado, remember to talk about the climate every single day, and to support your local news organizations as if they relied on your tax dollars. All right. Bye. I guess. And we're going to stop, and you're going to see my finger for a while. I'm so sorry.